There is something that's called la faux folie. Supposedly, these are children that died through some horrific accident to where they're demon-like children, and they appear in the shape of lights that try to get you to follow them so you'll be lost forever in the swamps.
But yeah, when you hear like scraping claws underneath the bed and it moves and you can, I was so terrified, dude. I pulled the blanket over my head. I could hear whatever it was breathing outside the sheet.
When I was a little gaffer there, we got into a car accident, hit a moose. My mom ended up under the steering wheel of the car, and she had a big hand-shaped bruise on her shoulder. It was like somebody pushed her underneath the steering wheel. My mom should have gotten decapitated. The weird part was we hit a moose, and we had a moose hanging from the rearview mirror.
The only other thing that I could think of would be a bear, but there's no bears in that area either. It's just not the right habitat for them, and when you see a bear's gonna move. It's gonna take off for the most part. And this thing just shot and did nothing.
This material world that you're told is bound by science and everything else, obviously science and physics are very important. There is so much more out there that is left to study, that is left to learn about.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Investigation Cryptoparalogy. Sit back, get relaxed, and crack open your favorite cold beverage as we dive deep into the abyss of what we were told couldn't possibly exist.
So, they were trying to hide things from people. They knew if people gained knowledge that they would lose power. But yeah, the Bible is full of the supernatural, including when Jesus cast out demons from various people that had them in them. And this was when the Pharisees and Sadducees, the ruling religious leaders of that time, decided that, hey, we need to get rid of this dude. He's ruining our gig. We're not going to have any control over the people anymore. And so they proceeded to start setting him up to where it was going to lead to his death. So that was the ultimate frame job.
So that was almost akin to the WWE Vince McMahon Montreal screw job, huh?
Oh, that was a whole lot worse because the Pharisees and Sadducees, man, Vince McMahon ain't got nothing on them. Well, you got to think these guys. Okay, we're going to go back in history to when Aaron, who was Moses's partner, so to speak, and not partner in that way. I mean, no, they didn't wear pink and frilly dresses and hang out. That's not what I'm talking about.
No, they were
actual companions in the sense of the best of friends. Aaron was Moses' spokesperson because Moses had a speech impediment, which a lot of people didn't know. That's what Moses meant when he said he was not gifted of tongue. He wasn't able to speak as well as Aaron could. So anyhow, when we go back to when Aaron and his descendants gained the priesthood, at one time it was a holy thing and they did minister to the people. But as the saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Those religious leaders became very powerful politically as well as religiously. And they put a lot of burdens on the people. And they looked down on the people and thought they were better than the other people. So rather than minister to them, they were always talking down to them. Jesus comes along, and here you got the ultimate hippie dude speaking peace, love, and good to all, man. Trust me, lead a good life and you're going to have it all. You don't need these cats around, dude. Let's just go around loving each other and giving to each other, man. Well, they kind of didn't like that because he was cutting into their issues. So every miracle that Jesus actually performed that's described in the Bible, from healing a blind woman and healing a blind man and casting out demons, yeah, attributed that, oh, you're in league with the devil. Kind of sound familiar? Salem witch trials and such.
Yep.
But it was the ultimate frame job. And this was predicted over 1,000 years before it happened. In fact, even way before that. If you go back to what Moses actually wrote in the first 5 books of the Bible, if we start with Genesis, at the time when the serpent deceived Eve and she ate something she wasn't supposed to eat because God told her no. Well, God told Adam no, Adam told Eve no, she didn't listen. And when he saw that, he's like, well, I can't live without her, and he partook. That set off a whole chain of events. God, in that moment, besides just kicking them out of the garden to where they would then start the process of death, to where their bodies would start breaking down rather than living in perfection, God made a promise to Eve that she would have, if one of her descendants would get the better of the devil. He would bruise her descendant in the heel. He would bruise Satan in the head. A bruise in the heel is not as serious as a bruise in the head. So the events that led up Jesus's death for the world was predicted even way back then at the beginning of time, so to speak. So he gets crucified. He rises on the 3rd day. War happens in heaven later on. Satan is kicked out of heaven and into what's called the vicinity of the earth, where he and his demons are now bound. Now let's think about what kind of anger this would set in when we're talking about cryptoparology and all of that. So now you have an entity that was used to roaming the universe, or universes, if you believe in more than one. And now he's trapped to the vicinity of the earth along with his followers. They're now trying to do harm to mankind.
Yeah.
So you have warring entities now that we are casualties of war and collateral damage and caught in between. Hence why some people see demons or demons harm them. People waking up with scratch marks on their leg, not knowing how it got there. Dolls spinning heads and talking to them. And this actually happened to one of my friends. One of my friends, and she was kind of an older lady. She used to collect Smurf dolls. One of them started threatening her and talking to her, similar to what you see in the Chucky movies.
I had a Furby that did that once.
So, yeah, not good at all. I mean, we had to actually help her burn them things and cleanse her house and stuff. So, yeah, not good. Like, you go in the vicinity while she still had them dolls, you go in the vicinity of the house and you'd swear you could make out shapes on top of her roof that were menacingly looking down at you going, don't come here. It's some scary stuff. So don't go and believe that this stuff doesn't exist. And by token, if you are Christian and you believe in the Bible, you need to believe in this paranormal stuff too. There's no two ways about it. They do exist.
Yep.
You got to think every single culture in the world has lore on this. And lore is based on fact. I'll give you another example of how all this is connected. How much do you know about Norse mythology?
A little bit, not a whole lot.
Okay. You do know that Odin is known as the All-Father.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever heard of Yggdrasil?
No.
That is the Norse tree of life. To gain ultimate knowledge, Odin had himself pierced with his hands apart, feet together, onto the tree of life to gain knowledge.
Huh.
Does that story sound familiar?
A little bit, yeah.
And in Norse mythology, gods could die. War in heaven. Eventually, the rebellious angels and Satan are going to be destroyed by the opposing faction. The Norse mythology calls it Ragnaros. We call it Armageddon. Other cultures call it something different.
But all stories all coincide with the others, so.
Pretty much. Think about Greek mythology. Remember how I said in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they believe in a heavenly mother? Okay. Greek mythology. Gaia, who's the mother of all, falls in love, and I forget the name, something like, it started with a U. It's what the planet Uranus is named after, who was the Earth. They had children. Two of the children were rivals and went against each other.
Okay.
Okay. So you get the brother versus brother thing, right? Cain and Abel. Okay. Now, when you talk about the Titans, who were the children of Gaia, and the Titans, one of them married, and again, I forget her name, but she had some kids. It was prophesied that one of those kids would kill Kronos. That's who I'm thinking of, Kronos.
Oh, the god of time.
Kronos. Was that?
So the Kronos was the god of time. Gotcha.
Kronos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he eats the children to stop the prophecy from happening. Eventually, Kronos' wife has Zeus. She tells Zeus about the stories. She hides Zeus from Kronos to protect him.
Mm-hmm.
Wraps a stone. Kronos eats the stone, thinking it was the baby Zeus. Zeus is hidden away, living among the nymphs, and is being educated and is told about the prophecies, and is told to ask his mother about how to rescue his siblings and to go against his father. And his mother gives him the weapon to go against his father. He cuts his father open, releases his brothers and sisters, and they take over and they imprison the Titans and keep them from coming to Earth. His mom gets angry at him, and then the story goes on and on. But that's how the Greek gods came about. Their story is so complex within this lore that when you go look at it, it's almost hard not to believe that something like this happened somewhere along the lines with a major war that happened between their factions. There were 3 different wars that Zeus fought against different entities. The war in heaven with the angels. The men of fame who got their name, Hercules being one of them, the Nephilim. A lot of people think of Hercules as a good guy. Got news for you folks. In a fit of anger, Hercules killed his wife and his children and then had to do 12 labors for a cowardly king in repentance. That's the way that mythology goes. So when you start thinking that a lot of stuff didn't exist, remember, all mythology, lore, and legend have some basis in fact.
Well, you're right about that. I mean, there has to be factual information in just about everything you hear, as far as history. Because if there wasn't, then, well, there wouldn't be scrolls written about it, books written about it. The Bible wouldn't have been written. There wouldn't be history books in general.
Well, let's go in and talk about another holy book that I know that you do know about, the Quran.
Yep.
Yes, it is the Muslim holy book. Guys and gals, and again, some of you might hate me for saying this, Muslims are not bad people. They're not. You have to remember that no matter what religious group you're talking about, there are always extremists in every single group. In the Quran, it does preach peace and brotherhood and a bringing together of all mankind. Those of you that don't know the story of Muhammad went off into a cave seeking solace and meditation to try to transcend. He felt himself grabbed and held by an otherworldly entity. That's how he described it. It kept whispering a message in his ear that he was to take to his people. When it finally released him, he was so afraid that when he got back to his place, his wife, who ironically enough was 20 years older than he was, he laid his head in her lap, told her the story, had the Jewish holy men come to him, they heard him, and then the message of the Muslim religion started getting passed around. There's a reason that this is the fastest growing religion on the planet. And no matter what you think, yes, it is. It is the fastest growing religion on the planet, according to today's statistics. But the main book of the Quran does preach peace. It does not preach death to the infidels. That's the evil people within that entity that are telling you this.
That's correct. I've actually had most of the Quran actually translated to me by a person who spoke the native tongue. And 90% of the translations that you see are incorrect. They're being translated by either U.S. scholars or Canadian scholars or English scholars who
don't understand the language.
Well, they don't. It's not so much that they don't understand the language. They want you to follow their narrative, and the narrative is incorrect. You have, traditional Muslims, and then you have radical Muslims, and the radical Muslims, they actually had their own version of the Quran written. Just like there's the
which
Holy
says
Bible,
something completely different than
right?
the original one.
Right. And you can use this reference. You have the Holy Bible, which is the Old Testament, the New Testament, and then you have the King James version. King James had his scholars and his scribes rewrite certain parts of the Old Testament and the New Testament so the people would fear King James instead of fearing God.
Well, he threatened his scribes. He said, if you don't translate it the way I'm saying, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
That's exactly what he told them.
Yeah. And that's correct. And the Quran, the same thing happened to not Quran, but the Quran. The same thing happened to that book. The radical Muslims have been around since the Ottoman Empire. They had the Quran rewritten. So what the U.S. scholars and if you want to call them scribes now, what they're actually translating is the radical Quran, not the traditional Quran, because there's nothing in there about killing Americans. There's nothing in there about killing infidels. There's nothing in there about men being able to.
What is in there says killing is wrong.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing in it about men being able to legally lay with a child. No pedophilia, none of that bullshit. No goats. No, well, I'm not going to say goat screwing. No goat fucking. None of that. There's none of that in the traditional Quran. It literally mirrors the Christian Bible, the Holy Bible, not the King James rewritten version and not the abridged version. It just about
the actual real Bible. Yeah. The one that you can get that is called the interlinear version, which has the ancient Hebrew language and the literal English translation on the side of it.
Right.
I know what you're talking about. And they have the same thing with the New Testament, where they have an interlinear version where they have the original ancient Greek with the English translation on the side of it, the literal English translation.
Right. So just the point I was trying to make is just about, and I say just about because some religions actually differ, but just about every Bible that is considered a Bible in that culture, they all mirror each other. This is what Troy was talking about earlier about the Great Flood. Every religion has a story about the Great Flood. Just about every religion has a story about their not God, but their Heavenly Father, or whatever, however you want to look at it, Jesus dying for their culture's sins. People, there's only one religion. You either believe in God or you don't. You're spiritual or you're not. Religion is a fallacy in itself. Religion's all about money. If you look back through history, it was all about money. Even in the Bible, it was about money.
It was all about power and control.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, it was about whoever had the most riches were in power. This is why the temples and I can't think of the other word. This is why they were destroyed and priests were killed, because priests walked around with gold on them all the time. Or, back during the Bronze Age, or, the Silver Age, or whatever age it was, this is why things were destroyed when they were. Because, the one being in power, the one, all seeing, all knowing, however you want to look at it, did not want people or humans to, worship riches or power. Right? Right. Everything's the same. All religion in itself, and I'm gonna say this, and it's probably gonna make Troy mad, but religion in itself is a cult. It is literally a cult. Mormonism is not a cult. I make that joke every now and then, but it's not. LDS is not a cult. But religion in itself,
there's a difference between organized religion and religious organizations.
Yes,
there's a huge difference.
Yes,
I'll give you an example. Jehovah's Witnesses are an organization. They are not a religion. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is an organization. It is not a religion. There's a huge difference.
Yes. but organized religion itself is a cult. And it's been proven over and over and over. But if you
don't drink the Kool-Aid.
right, don't drink the Kool-Aid. But if you set but if you sit back and you dissect it as a whole, the message is the message of any culture, any whether it's Buddhism or LDS or Christians or whatever, the message is the same. The ending message is the same. And then stories throughout each different religion mirror each other. Books that are written, the Bibles or the holy books, mirror each other. If they were different, why would they mirror each other? They're not trying to steal from each other. They're preaching the same message.
Yeah. I mean that's the whole thing in a nutshell. But a lot of people don't realize that, I mean, you got to understand that we are literally, guys, we are in the middle of an unseen war. And I call it an unseen war because most people are unaware about the war on the spiritual plane that is still occurring at this moment, where we are collateral damage. There's no other way to put it. Where you're told to choose a side.
Yep. Now, I will mention one thing, and it's probably going to turn my listeners, on their ear, or probably turn them onto their ear. But everybody, all throughout growing up, you were told God and Jesus, good. Satan, bad. Right? Now, I have a really good friend of mine who at one point in his life did partake in the Church of Satan. And I was clued in to what actually goes on within the Church of Satan. Now, here's the thing. Our Bible says, and I'm going to say it caveman like, so some people out there, and I'm not saying all my listeners because most of my listeners are intellectual.
Basically, you're going to make it easy to understand. Let's put it in that terminology.
Yes, I'm going to make it easy to understand. I'm going to caveman it. God good, Satan bad. But if you flip the script in the Church of Satan, it is Lucifer good, not Satan. They do not say Satan. Lucifer good, God, or I can't remember the name now. Yahweh, yeah. Lucifer good, Yahweh bad. Everything that's in the Bible and everything that's said good about God is completely reversed. And it's Lucifer that, once Lucifer was expelled from heaven is actually when his story starts, because there was no knowledge of him prior to that, other than what he supposedly did to get cast from heaven. After he was cast from heaven, he was not cast into the fiery pit or any of that bullshit.
He's still not in the fiery pit.
Right. No, he's still not. And the whole Satan, Satan will return to earth in 1,000 years, this, that, and the other. That'll never happen because he still walks the earth. He was cast from heaven to earth. That's where his casting ended. He didn't go to a fiery pit. He didn't go to hell. His story
hold on. When you're talking about the 1,000 years, that's a whole different thing. What that's about, what's mentioned about the new millennium, so to speak, what they're saying, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if it's a literal 1,000 years or if it's symbolism. Okay, let's put it at that. But from what the holy books say is that because of the extent of our imperfection at the time when this new millennium would actually start, it would take us that long to get back to actual perfection.
Yeah, well, yeah.
At the end of which, once we supposedly all hit perfection, Satan's going to be allowed to tempt us all again, and whoever falls short is going to be destroyed with him. Now, that's what scriptures say.
Okay, well, there's actually scripture also that says that Satan is not the one that tempts anybody, and that's actually in the book of Enoch. That's in one of the removed by the Vatican books from the Bible. Now,
99% of what happens to us is because of us.
yeah,
Nothing at all to do with anything else.
I mean, it's just like if you look at it from a human standpoint and not a God standpoint, or a higher entity standpoint. If you look at it from a human standpoint, when a parent raises a child and the child becomes a bully, and then the child gets older into adulthood, and the parent is grieving the death of the child or the incarceration of the child, it's not the choices that the child made. It's the choices that the parent made when the parent was raising the child. So it's our choices. What we do now affects the next generation. What that generation does affects the next generation, and so forth and so on.
So
and that's the reason why this
in other
world is
words,
so
Will,
screwed up.
what you're saying is that if I have a daughter, and let's say right now she'd be 5-6 years old, and I dress her in short dresses and half tops and think it's cute when she says curse words and such and acts all kind of grown uppish ways, that I shouldn't be surprised when she becomes a prostitute later?
No, you shouldn't be surprised at all, because that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's the whole thing. And, we're not getting so much off topic. We're really not, but it's the whole thing. It's not that we're being tempted by Satan or we're being tempted by Lucifer or anything like that, or shown the wrong ways by God. It's the literal choices that we make. That's the beauty of free will. We have the choice. We can make the right choice or the wrong choice. And right now we're making the wrong choices. So, years and years and years down the road in the future, when they look back on us, they're going to say, oh, well, if the world is more religious, and I really think it will be, they're going to look back on us and go, oh, well, Satan had a big hand in it, or whatever he's called then. And, or God was just punishing them. No, that's not what's happening. We're punishing ourselves because of the choices that we make. And we're making the wrong choices in everything. Finances, socialistic world, everything. We're just making the wrong choices. That's the reason why we have so many school shootings. That's the reason why we have so many bullies.
This brings me to something else, though. And folks, I'm not meaning any disrespect to anybody that's ever lost a loved one, but it's a huge mistake to say that God took him because he needed another angel. Wrong. Death happens because of our imperfect bodies that break down due to certain circumstances. Murders happen because of other people's wrong choices. It is not God's will or any entity's will that your loved one dies. It happens. And we grieve for them, and we cry because we miss them. And that's the human part of it. But don't blame God. Don't blame Satan. It's human.
Yeah. It's the human affliction.
Like, for example, Will, one of your friends that actually died for a while and came back, why don't you share that story with us?
Okay.
You thought I forgot about that.
Yeah. I had a really good friend, and we both joined the military at the same time. And we were both out of country at the same time. And I'm not going to say the exact circumstances of what got him dead, but he died. And he was dead for clinically, medically, whatever you want to call it, hours. And he says that he had an out of body experience, a lot of things that were going on, he was floating above his body looking down. But, the moral of the story here is, the man died. And it's not something that God caused. It's not something that Satan caused. It ain't anything that I caused. It's just we were in the wrong place, the wrong time, wrong situation. And he told me, after hours and hours of him actually being pronounced clinically dead, no brain activity, no heartbeat, nothing. The body was dead. He just woke up. He opened his eyes. He took a deep breath, sat up. There he was again. And there's no possible way that could have happened, because 15 minutes after, you die, you lose brain activity. Your heart completely stops. It'll actually go down to a low beat to where it's not registered. You can't register it, but the heart still beats. But he was dead for hours. Okay. So he tells me, when you die, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You have a out of body experience as your soul is leaving the body. You'll actually see your body laying there, but there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You don't hear a voice. You don't hear, you don't talk to God. And it's not discounting that there's a God. He said, but in his experience, he didn't speak to God. He didn't speak to anybody for at least about an hour, 2 hours. And in this world's time, he's gauging this, but it could, in whatever instances time, it could have been days or years or months or millennia. We don't know. Time works different, in different on different planes. So, everybody talks about, oh, well, I seen a light at the end of the tunnel, or I talked to God, and he said to, return to earth because I have unfinished business. Well, this guy, he said time went on, and then he heard a voice, and he couldn't understand it. It was not speaking English. And he actually recounted and spoke to the best of his ability, the way the language sounded. And from what I've heard from, digging into religion and religious entities and languages and things like that, and dialects, the being was speaking Aramaic. Aramaic is a dead language. Nobody has heard that language in thousands of years.
Yeah, it's close to Enochian, which was the language of the angels, supposedly.
Yeah. So they call Aramaic the language of the gods, which is the language that the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods, all the gods are supposed to speak. Right? So he hears this voice speaking, but he doesn't know if it's speaking directly to him. And you could tell if a voice is speaking to you just by the tone of the voice. And he said that he got the gist of it wasn't his time. That's just the feeling he had. There wasn't a voice saying, oh, well, you need to wake up, or, it's not your time, or I'm not taking you. He said he didn't know if it was God, if it was Lucifer, if it was, the Archangel Gabriel. There's just no way of knowing. But he got the general feeling, the general gist of it was, it's not your time. Now, I said earlier that I wasn't going to give you the particulars of what got him dead, but he had a hole in the middle of his chest about the size of a softball. And if you think about the middle of your chest, not the top of your chest, but right at your sternum, and right at your sternum, right below your sternum was where your heart sits. He had a hole the size of a softball straight through him. His heart was gone, completely gone, just blown in half or into pieces or whatever. He opened his eyes and sat up. And when the sheet fell from around his neck, where they had pulled it up to his neck, the sheet fell from around his neck and fell down. He doesn't have a shirt on or anything. There was no hole there anymore. It's gone. I watched the man die. I watched what caused him to die with my own eyes, as did several other people in the unit. And all of us were standing around that makeshift surgical unit, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. We watched this. We stood there and we mourned for 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. And at the third hour, he sat up. And he's looking at us like, what's going on? Dude, you died. You've been dead for hours. Well, I feel fine. Dude, you had a hole in your chest the size of a softball. Straight through. You could look straight through. And he touched his chest. And he said, and he's pushing on the area, and you can see him pushing into the muscle because boy had a washboard stomach, let me tell you. And I mean, it was just solid. There was no blood on him. Nothing. It's just like it never happened.
And didn't he say something about that? They told him it wasn't time for him to come home yet?
Yeah, it's not time for you to come home yet. Now, when I said he didn't understand the language, he didn't understand the language. He got the gist of it. Wasn't his time to die. It wasn't his time. But he said just as he was opening his eyes, he heard, not in English, but in broken English, like say a Greek, an old Greek man would be trying to speak English. He heard in like a broken Greek English, "It's not your time to come home. Wake up."
So now, I mean, yeah, that's some crazy stuff.
That'll give you chills. Actually, it gave me chills, recounting it.
I guess it did.
I got chicken skin, man. I got goosebumps everywhere. I got goosebumps on goosebumps. But
okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to get back to the
story.
The Satanic Bible. What I was going to say is, and what I was going to say that would turn people on their heads, is if you sit and think, okay, well, God good, Satan bad, and the Satanic Bible, a real Satanic Bible, not this crap that's written up for TVs and movies and shit. And a real Satanic Bible where they don't even call him Satan, they just refer to him as Lucifer. Lucifer is in the good spot. God is in the bad spot. What if it really was like that? And all these years we've been lied to, just so we'd be controlled, just like King James did, and just like they did with the Quran. And not the American government, not a one world government, but somebody pulling the string somewhere.
Well, it's like you and I have been discussing. We're caught in the middle of a war. Who's to say what side is what?
I mean, you have to have pawns, and we're pawns. So,
yeah. All right. So now I'm going to describe something to you, and then I'm going to get your opinion on it, because this is something that actually happened to me. Do you know where the Burglar Rose Highway is?
Right off the top of my head,
being in Homa, I didn't know if you were familiar with that road or not. They call it the Dead Man Zone on one part of it.
Not right off the top of my head. Man, that's been
Okay.
years ago.
And they call it the dead man zone because of the chemical place that they have there where deadly chemicals are dumped and whatnot, and trees ain't growing right and whatnot. And the smell is horrible. But anyhow, it's a stretch of road between the city of Berg and, well, the town of Berg and the town of LaRose. And there's no streetlights on it at all. Okay. So I was dating a girl from Homa at the time. And I was on my way back to my parents' house because I was still in college at the time too. And it was the weekend. And I'm driving in my Dodge, full-size Dodge Ram 250. Okay. Now, I added a top on the back end of it, on the bed of it, that fit into those holes that's in the bed of a truck.
Yeah.
And it had little cloth wings that came out so that I could sell produce out of it. That was a part-time job I had working off of my dad's license because he was a produce salesman. He would go up and down the streets and whatnot like that. Okay.
Yeah, just keep going.
Well, I fell asleep at the wheel and apparently my foot was on the accelerator. I woke up in time to where I was taking a curve way too fast that was way too sharp. The truck flipped onto the cab. And all I could remember is going, oh, damn, I'm going to die. I didn't. Some kind of way, I made my way out of the cab. Cops had to be called. Now, after I got out, I looked at the cab of the truck. The cab was crushed all the way down to the dashboard. Yet I got out without a scratch.
Yeah, I think I remember you telling me about that.
I could swear I felt something pull me out of that cab.
Damn.
I still don't know how I survived it without a scratch, much less survived it at all. The cab was crushed all the way down past the steering wheel to the dashboard with the steering wheel crushed down into the seat.
Wow.
But I'm still here. I can't explain it. Because by all accounts, I should have died.
Just makes you think somebody's out there somewhere watching over everyone.
Well, again, I can go back and start even from before I even started kindergarten. I remember being on a wharf near my brother's trawl boat, and they were getting ready for him to take off, and I slipped off the wharf, and I hit the water. Now, we're talking about near the Gulf of Mexico, where he's getting ready to take off, and I slipped off the wharf that connected to his boat into that murky water, and yet a hand grabbed me by the hair and pulled me up.
And it wasn't your brother.
No. Now, another incident that happened was when I lost my eye. We're going to fast forward to where I'm at the age of 13. We're on my brother's troll boat, that same boat I was telling you about with the devilfish. And I was fishing some amberjack. Now, for those of you that don't know how big amberjack is, they can get quite large. These were on the average of about 100 pounds each. But I didn't have a fishing line. So I took a heavy duty welding rod. So let's just say a long piece of iron. And I bent it into the shape of a hook. And I bent the other end into an eye loop. And I tied some nylon rope to the eye loop. Tied the other end of the nylon rope to a scrub brush that was used to scrub the deck of the boat, putting some bait on that makeshift hook, throwing it over, and pulling up the amberjack, not thinking about it. Nylon rope, when it gets wet, stretches like a rubber band. One of the fish I was pulling up got hooked up on the rubber railing of the deck. The hook came, tore the fish's mouth and came back. The curved part of the hook hit perfectly on my left eye to pop it like an egg yolk.
Oh shit.
Now here's the scary part. 1 centimeter to the right, and I'd have been dead. It would have broke the bridge of my nose and it would have gone into my brain.
Damn.
But anyhow, the eye busted. My brother gets on the radio, the CB, calls for emergency help. Coast Guard comes out. My brother took ice from the ice hole where the shrimp's at. Now think about the bacteria in Gulf salt water with the shrimp and puts it on the damaged eye.
Damn.
Coast Guard comes, they wrap me up in the boat. Don't even know how fast we were going. My brother says they were doing about 110 to 120 in that boat. Get me to the heliport. They get me to West Jefferson Hospital in New Orleans. Now, again, this is back in the late 70s, 1970s, as opposed to the 1870s. And now get this. Remember what I said about the type of ice he put on my eye that's full of all of this Gulf of Mexico shrimp bacteria stuff. The eye didn't get infected, and neither my right eye, my good eye. By all accounts, I was supposed to either be blind or dead.
But yet here you are.
Yep. Now, soon after that, I was about 15. Now, this was before four-wheelers, folks. They used to have something called three-wheelers, all-terrain vehicles with 3 wheels, one in the front, one in the back, a trike. Riding on
one
a
in the
dirt
front,
road.
2 in the back.
Well, this was 1 in the front, 2 in the back. Riding on a dirt road, doing about 75, wearing a helmet and goggles, because by all means, my dad wanted me to protect my good eye. Okay, cool. Now, the kind of dust that's kicked up when you're going that fast on a dirt road makes visibility slim. Apparently on that road, a farmer who got tired of people going across his land put up barbed wire. Hit the barbed wire full speed. Some kind of way, don't know how, I was thrown off the bike and landed, and the bike flipped and flipped and flipped, landed upright, engine still running, with the galvanized steel post and barbed wire wrapped all up and tangled into the bike. I didn't have a scratch.
Boy, you got lucky.
Now think about that. That's 3 separate incidents I've described to you. And there's about 8 others almost exactly like it, to where I'm not supposed to be here, but I am. That's not coincidence. Nobody can convince me that's coincidence. Too many things have happened to me for me to think it's coincidence that I'm still here, including a leaking appendix that had turned gangrenous when I was about 32, to where I'm walking into the hospital, double bent over, not knowing that the appendix was actually leaking. Just thought it was appendicitis. Okay, they're going to put me to sleep. They're going to remove it. No, it was leaking and gangrenous, which means it was seeping into my body where sepsis was supposed to have set in and didn't. And here I am. Not only here I am, an appendix surgery, you're supposed to be in the hospital 2 weeks and then another week of recovery. I was out of the hospital in 4 days and back teaching the following Monday, which was 7 days.
Damn. So you are Superman.
I don't know. I can't explain it. But it goes into everything that we have talked about up until right now. For me, it's 2:30 in the morning. So again, there's a lot of stuff out there that cannot be explained by any science that we currently have.
Well, we've touched on a lot of different subjects, and we try to give to the best of our ability and the best of our knowledge, the best explanation we can come up with, for the subjects of the information that we've dug up. And I know it's late there. Well, not late. Hell, it's early there.
Whichever way you want to describe it.
It's late here. It's early there. I mean, we're about an hour apart. So, yeah. And you're probably getting tired. You probably got to teach school tomorrow.
Nope.
But
don't know when I'm going back to work because of Hurricane Ida.
Oh, really?
Which, okay, here's another miracle, dude, because you got to explain this shit to me. And I'm sorry for cursing on your show, but I don't understand this. The damage from Ida was so severe that I got 2 nephews that are now homeless. My sister's house, this is in Galliano, major damage. My brother's house, major damage. Over 3/4 of Houma, major damage. Damage all over Thibodeau, which is only 15 minutes away from me. Damage, extreme damage, half a mile up from my house going to the north, half a mile away from my house going toward the south. My house and the houses to the left of my house, 0 damage. Not a snap tree, not a snap twig, no damage, no wind damage, no flood damage.
I can't explain that. Maybe one of the listeners can, but I can't explain that.
It was as if my house and the one next to me was in a protective bubble. I swear. A branch broke off one of my trees, missed my van, missed the bedroom window on the left side of my house, hit my porch railing and broke the porch railing, and that was it.
Wow. Yeah, I can't explain that. But I mean, that's like when Hurricane Hugo came through in North Carolina when I was still living out there. It tore up everything in town except for the apartment. When I say apartment complex, it wasn't a tall building. It was a bunch of apartments that were spread out. But it tore up everything in town, all the woods around the basketball court, destroyed the pool, the public pool, blew a hole into the side of the school that I was going to at the time, which is a central school. And I mean, it just decimated everything everywhere except for the apartment complex that I lived in. And this old black woman's house that was up on the hill. And that house was over 100 years old. Find us on the web at www.investigation-cryptoparalogy. That's CRYPTOPARAOLOGY.com. On Facebook at www.facebook.com/investigation crypto. Listen to us on any major podcast players, including Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and of course Spotify. We continue to spread to more podcast players each day. You may contact us by using the contact page on the website, or by sending a direct message to our Facebook page, or by emailing us directly at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. That is investigation, CRYPTOPARAOLOGY@gmail.com. Also, I would like to add this. If you're feeling down on yourself, or like you don't matter, or there's no hope left, we're here for you. You can contact us through our Facebook page or by emailing us at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. We are happy to listen and possibly help you find a better tomorrow. If you don't want to talk to us, you can contact the Suicide Hotline of the United States. They have a crisis text line if you verbally speaking to someone is not your thing. Text HOME, all capital letters, HOME, to 741741. If you do want to verbally speak to someone, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. And if you are a veteran, you can also call 1-800-273-8255 and then press 1. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. I sincerely hope you will join us again next time for another spine-tingling, hair-raising experience from the depths of the abyss. If you would like to contact me about an experience you have had or to get on the show, email me at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. That's investigation, CRYPTOPARAOLOGY@gmail.com.
'Cause my monsters are real, and they're trained how to kill, and there's no coming back, and they just laugh at how I feel. And these monsters can bite, and they'll never say die, and there's no going back. If I get trapped, I'll never heal. Yeah, my monsters are real. Good for you, you hurt everybody. Good for you, you hurt everyone. Good for you, you love nobody. Good for you, you owe no one. Leave your weapon on the table, wrapped in burlap, barely able. Call the doctor, say a prayer, choose a God you think is fair. 'Cause my